Oak logs will warm you well, that are old and dry. Logs of pine will sweetly smell, but the sparks will fly. Birch logs will burn too fast, chestnuts scarce at all, sir, and hawthorn logs are known to last, that are cut down in the fall, sir. Surely you will find that none compare to the hardwood logs that are cut in winter time, sir. Holly logs will burn like wax, you can burn them green. Elm logs burn like smoldering flax, with no flames to be seen. Beech logs for winter time, yew logs as well, sir. Green elder logs, it is a crime for any man to sell, sir. Surely you will find that none compare to the hardwood logs that are cut in winter time, sir. Pear logs and apple logs, they will scent your room. Cherry logs across the docks smell like flowers in bloom. But ash logs, smooth and gray, buy them green or old, sir, and buy up all that come your way, for they're worth their weight in gold, sir. Surely you will find that none compare to the hardwood logs that are cut in winter time, sir. Surely you will find that none compare to the hardwood logs that are cut in winter time, sir.
Greetings! The slideshow I just shared was a peek inside my own medieval SCA encampment. In my last video, I promised to talk to you a little bit more about fire, specifically about wood fires, and share what I have learned inside that encampment, as wood is the only source of light, heat, and cooking fuel that I have available to me. The song that you heard was a song, one of many, many songs written during or about the medieval period on the subject of either fire or, in this case specifically, wood. And it was sung by myself and my own household performing troupe, Claire Kabui, which translates, by the way, to Company of the Yellow Dog. And perhaps you even saw a glimpse of a yellow dog in that slideshow. When we first learned to sing the song, it was just a fun song that we sang. But very soon we learned that it was a very important tool, as it had many lessons to teach about the properties of different kinds of wood. While most any dry, aged wood will burn eventually, not all woods are created equally. If you've ever bought a bundle of firewood in the grocery store, you may have noticed that most of them are marked either hot or hard, and that is because they're actually intended for different purpose. Hot woods, those marked with the word hot, are usually a well-seasoned soft wood, usually pine, maybe spruce or fir. They're very good for getting a fire quickly, as they ignite rather easily, but they contain a lot of resin, so they burn very hot and fast. So they don't have a lasting fire. They're not good for lasting fires. If you're looking for a quick warming fire, or you're looking to build a fire that is going to go out before you have to go to bed, softwood is probably fine for you. If the wood is marked hard, it is exactly that. It is hard wood. It is denser. You can even see when you pick it up, it's often heavier. And it's usually made of oak or ash or one of the fruit woods or one of the nut woods. It doesn't have as much resin, so it's a little harder to catch fire eventually. But once burned, it gives you a little bit of a less heat. It burns a little longer. It often also has very pleasant aromas to it, depending on the kind of wood, particularly like fruit wood. Some of the fruit woods are wonderful because they help flavoring the meats on your barbecue and are used for smoking for that reason. But typically a well-seasoned hardwood does not give off too much smoke, so it's really an ideal wood for cooking. During the medieval period, people did not have the luxury, really, of finding just the right wood for their fire. They usually only could, most often they could use things that they were able to gather from the ground, maybe some dead wood that was laying around, or fallen trees or whatever. Or very often they would collect twigs and branches, bundle them together into something called a faggot to burn. In some areas in medieval England and Scotland, there was hardly any wood at all. Many of the wooded areas were burned for different purposes. Burned and cleared. In Scotland, for instance, many areas were burned to make room for grazing crops, such as heather, for their animals, their cattle, their sheep. Sometimes the wooded areas were burned during raids, maybe Viking raids, whatever. So wood was not that plentiful, and what happened as a result of that was that, as with fewer trees in a climate such as Scotland, which is very wet to begin with, a lot of rain, the ground really became waterlogged very quickly because there were no trees to soak up the water, to wick up the water. And the water became waterlogged and very boggy in some places. And so the resulting peat, thick areas of peat, were what was actually cut and burned for fuel for many, many, many years in Scotland. In our SCA camp, for our gathering fire, we call it, our regular campfire, we use usually a combination of hot wood and hardwood, whatever is available. Any kind of well-seasoned wood that is available we can use, because it's just for our fire, to give us light, to give us warmth while we gather. But for cooking, we use something specifically called hardwood lump charcoal. This is not to be confused with the briquettes that you buy in a grocery store. They're very different in properties, and they're very different in results. The charcoal briquettes that you buy in the grocery store are usually made of scrap wood or composite of some, usually mostly softwoods, glued together. They burn well, they do burn well, but they usually take a good while to burn. They burn fast, and when they're out, they're out. So you so often find yourselves having to start up another batch of coals if you have something that takes a longer time to cook. Sometimes they're hard to light, and people resort to things like using lighter fluid. I don't want to talk about lighter fluid because it's horrible. It's horrible. I'm so opinionated on the subject. I'm sorry if I'm hurting your feelings, but it is horrible. It smells bad and it tastes bad, and it's bad chemically. If you're going to use charcoal, a chimney is the best thing, where you can start them without charcoal, without lighter fluid. But again, you're lighting a whole chimney of coals. They burn out quickly. When they're gone, they're gone. Lump hardwood charcoal is exactly what it is. It is charcoal that is made from hardwood. If you look at it, it doesn't look like little squares like the charcoal briquettes. It looks like little pieces of wood. It's a little bit easier to light. It burns. You don't need a whole lot of it when it burns. When it burns, it tends to burn a little hotter than charcoal briquettes do, but you don't need as much. You don't need to have big piles of it. You can have a spread out fire. So a little goes a long way. And you can use every bit of it. It doesn't go to ash so quickly. If it goes out and you still have little bits left over, you can relight it. It gives a lovely flavor to your wood as well. So it's a wonderful thing to use in a cooking fire. The last video I made these, I don't know if you saw it, but I made fire starters to take on a camping weekend that I was going on over the holiday weekend. And I promised that I was going to compare 4 different kinds and give you the results. And that's exactly what I did. First of all, this is the kind that I made, similar to the one that was gifted to me when I was camping in Oregon. It is made out of, first of all, a cardboard egg carton, and then it is filled with little wood chips, and I recycled some candle wax for them. These worked wonderfully, just as I thought they would. They were wonderful. They burned really well. They burned long. I took, I had no complaints at all with these. I'm going to make many more of these. I tried making some out of sawdust that was very fine off of my husband's table where he has his bandsaw. Those never even made it out the door of my home, because once the wax cooled and firmed up on the top, I could see that it did not penetrate at all down into the sawdust. So it ended up to be like a layer of hardened wax and just sawdust, which spilled out everywhere. It was nothing at all. So those, no, not to use. We need the texture as in something a little bigger. If you can see the wood chips, they're a little bit, it's a coarser texture of wood. Dryer lint. I was inclined first to say that I didn't prefer it so much because I thought it smoldered a little more than the wood. My husband, who did a lot of the cooking, said he thinks I'm just being prejudiced. He thinks they work just as well. Perhaps some of them smoldered a little bit more than others rather than burned for a while, because the dryer lint tends to compact when you put it into the egg carton. It'll settle and it gets rather dense. So the same kind of effect that would occur as did the sawdust, it doesn't give enough room in there to for the wax to actually penetrate down in the fire starter. So I think if you fluff them up right before you added the candle wax, they would work very well. I might be prejudiced. Dryer lint in my cooking fire just did not seem to be so aesthetically pleasing to me. But honestly, if it's recycling, I'm not going to cut up wood just to make sawdust or wood chips. So if I don't have the wood chips, dryer lint is something we all do always have. I will definitely use that. The little bits, remember I cut the little bits off of the top here. I don't know, these little bits off of here, and cut those up. They worked fine. I mean, sure, why not use them if you have them? They performed just as I suspected they would, because they are paper, actually cardboard rather than wood. They burned a little faster, but still the wax in the starter slowed it down, and it was able to, my kindling, I was able to ignite just fine, and I had a really lovely experience with them. The last thing that I was concerned about was, remember when I said I thought I filled them too full, and I thought, am I going to have to cut these apart, to get them to use them? Well, actually, no. This was so fantastic. I found that it's actually very simple to just tear them apart. And as a matter of fact, it's quite fun to do. It's really quite fun to do. And I love to just tear them up and make bags and bags of them. So I just bend it, and it comes right apart. Very fun. So I can see me making them just so I can tear them apart. But anyway, and then I just took a bag and stored them in my bag. Just like that. Okay, so that's pretty cool. That was a very worthwhile experiment. So if you have an opportunity to make some, if you're going to use them, I highly recommend it. Okay, I'm going to cut here just for a second. Okay, as you can see, I've repositioned my camera a bit so that you can see what it is that I'm going to be working on next. I cannot speak of wood nor my connection to the ancient Celts without mentioning something called the ogham, or also called ogham. It's also sometimes called the Celtic tree alphabet. Now, there's been some confusion concerning the ogham over the years. Many neo-pagans particularly believe that the Celts actually built a tree calendar where they assigned each full moon a corresponding tree image from the ogham. Well, while I'm not really convinced that the calendar actually existed, the alphabet certainly did. There are hundreds of surviving ogham inscriptions found throughout Ireland and Western Britain, and some of the letter names in the ogham actually do seem to be the name of trees. Now, some of the early Irish literature used kennings to explain the names of the ogham. Kennings are compound expressions often used in Norse poetry. They have metaphorical meanings, actually used for dramatic poetry. Poetry was really meant to be heard, not read. And in the native languages, some of the kennings added drama to the tale. More color, more layers of meaning to the tale as well. An example of a kenning would be, instead of saying battle, you might say sword storm. So anyway, Irish literature did the same thing in the early literature, used kennings to explain the characters of the Ogham. And based on these kennings, some later scholars started to think that maybe they could interpret the kennings into actual trees or plants, as some of the kennings sort of described some of the properties of some of the plants. And it is very well known that the Druids and the Celts had a very, very strong connection to the wood, to the tree, to the forest. I want to give you an idea in a minute. Oh, this is what I wanted to show you. Here I have in front of me. This is just something that I printed out over the internet. Someone illuminated the Ogham, some of the characters from the Ogham. Her name at the bottom here says Yvonne Vetchins. I want to give her credit. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is or how to contact her. But anyway, I just wanted to show you what the Ogham looks like, the characters themselves look like. And here we see this staff, and this is stave actually it's called, on the side here. You see this line, and then a series of lines coming off of the stave. These are the characters that we're talking about. Okay, and I'll go into a little bit detail later what we mean. But one reason I wanted to show this to you is this gives you an idea when these were actually written. It was meant to be read either from the bottom to the top, or it was meant to be read as we do from the left to the right. So as you see inscriptions of these, it's important to know that, because as you see inscriptions, for instance, this first grouping have the lines going off to the right. It's either read, these lines go to the right or they go down. The second groupings go to the left or go up. So it's important to get your frame of reference to be able to tell the difference in the inscriptions, actually what you're reading. Like you're going to really be reading a lot of Irish Ogham, but we'll never know. Anyway, I wanted to assigning the properties to the characters is sort of what I want to talk about a little bit today, because I think this is where we get really interesting. Well, most of these extant inscriptions that we do see were mainly used as territorial markers or on gravestones. There's evidence from early Irish sagas and legends that indicates that the Ogham was also used to send short messages. It might have been used to denote ownership on objects. It was not just used on stone, but also staves of wood or on metal. As you can see, very easy to do because they are all straight lines. So you can inscribe that on, very simply, on stone or metal or wood, rather than a curved line, which would be very hard to do. Anyway, the might have denoted ownership. They might have also been used for cryptic messages. Remember, this was an alphabet that was used by the Celts, only the Celts. This was something that someone that was not of their tribe would not be able to read. So a lot of their secrets maybe had been used to inscribe some of their secrets. And also of interest to me and of interest to you today probably, some also inscriptions were maybe used for magical purposes. We have evidence that the Druids and their bards did assign magical properties to the script. And they might have used this for a tool for divination, very like the Viking runes. They also may have used it to ponder some of the mysteries of life. Now, I don't know very much about it. I think this is a very extensive subject. There's a lot of books available, a lot of information on the internet. I'm going to just give you a little overview of what I know from what I have read about the Bard's lore of the Ogham, the Druids, the Bards of the Druids, a little insight into what their ideas might have been, living in forest areas as a place of an enchanted place, the relationship between the trees themselves and the other world. There was a quote in one of the books which I really liked that said, "To know the wood on the mystic level is to have a foothold in the other world through a real place of the here and now." And I really liked that a lot. I thought that was very interesting. So I'm going to just give you a very brief overview of the characters of the Ogham, how they are translated, yes, into names of trees or plants, but again, bear in mind, this is not historical names. These names are translated from the historic characters. The alphabet is real. Whether or not they actually built a calendar, a lunar calendar where they named each full month one of these names, I find a little questionable. If that's what you want to follow in your practice, please go ahead and do that. I'm not trying to tell you not to. But I am saying that even if you do not follow that line of thinking, the alphabet itself has a lot of wisdom in it and a lot of really wonderful connections between yourself and the trees. And I know a lot of us are very connected to trees. So that's why I thought some of you might be interested in finding out what I have learned. One really interesting thing before I put this page away is I also wanted to explain to you, this is something that I thought I learned in my studies. Oh wait, I want to first of all caution you. The names that you're going to see, if you start to do any excuse me, if you start to do any more research on the subject, remember that the names of these characters were first named in ancient Irish, the ancient Irish language. And then, of course, the later as the language developed, it changed. Just like if you know anything about English, for instance, we have what we call our modern English. During the Middle Ages, people were speaking Middle English, not modern English, Middle English. And before that, there was Old English. There's ancient languages. Languages has changed. So if you see the names of the Ogham, of the characters of the Ogham, you're going to see them being assigned different kinds of names. Some they're going to be close, but they do vary in spelling and pronunciation. And I just want you to know that. And also then, of course, the assignments of the trees is not because you have the wrong information. It's because this is something that was translated into modern comprehension from the ancient kennings. Okay? All right. Hope I didn't mix up. Anyway, one thing I did want to point out that was really, really fun before I put this page away is this stave, which I just showed you, this stave of the Ogham, the entire thing, is referred to as the Beluish Nuin. And Beluish Nuin is named for Be, which is the first character, Luish, second character, and Nuin, which is the final character of the first grouping. So Beluish Nuin is sort of the ancient counterpart of the ABCs, which is how we refer to our alphabet in modern day. So I thought that was sort of interesting. Just one of those little tidbits. I think it's so cool. Okay, so anyway, what I'm going to be doing today while I talk to you about the characters are I'm making let me put this aside. I'm making a string of beads here for my husband to probably use on his ceremonial staff that he uses when we light our first fire within our encampment. So I have some bits of calcite here that I have marked, described each one with a character from the Ogham, and I'm going to be stringing them on the bead while I talk to you a little bit about the characters themselves. Okay, so the very first, as you see, and I'm going to be giving you just some thoughts. There are many, many meanings. If you're really interested in using the Ogham as a tool of divination, you might want to look into it a little further. I give just the very basic overview, again, to offer you today. It's not something I do normally. I'm just dabbling, just like most of us are. Okay, so the very first character I did say is Be. This is how it's pronounced. And it is associated with the birch tree. Be. And I think the reason it is associated with the birch tree is when a forested area burns, the birch is the first to appear, among the first to appear. The whiteness of the tree suggests it has a connection to the white moon goddess, the birth giver and the death bringer. Birch is associated with magic done for creativity and fertility, as well as healing, protection, both physical and spiritual healing. For purpose of divination, it may indicate a need to deal with or clear away the bad things in life in order to make a new beginning. Okay, the second character I did mention is Lush, associated with the rowan tree. Okay, both the wood and the berries are said to repel evil forces, such as particularly psychic attacks, and to bring good luck. To possess a staff or wand of the rowan would provide the owner with protection, so it was often carried by the Norsemen. Associated with Brige, the Celtic goddess of hearth and home, the rowan offers protection to mothers and families as well as their hearth fires. The rowan is used magically during astral travel to gain personal power and success and to develop powers of foretelling. The third character in the first grouping is the fern or farren, associated with the alder tree. Out of Stara, the alder is flourishing on the riverbanks. Its roots are in the water, bridging the magical space between the worlds that the Druids were so fond of. Right? Because of its durability, it was often made into shields. Often, when a warrior fell far away from his homeland, his body was placed upon the shield, which would carry him to the other world. Alder flowers and twigs are often used in fairy magic and magic relating to prophecy and divination. Fern or farren offers protection during conflicts and freedom from binding. Okay. The next one is Sala or Salia, associated with the willow tree. Willow bark is actually one of the oldest pain relievers in the world. The willow is associated with romantic love, harmony, healing, and protection from disease, growth of knowledge, and women's fertility. It is very much tied to the phases of the moon, and its power is said to be greatest at night unless the moon is visible during the day. And the last one in the grouping, noon, or the ash tree. The Norse world tree was an ash. The spear of Odin was made from a branch of the tree. The ash is the healing wood and the shaman's strength. And good for the magic wood focuses on the inner self. It is associated with ocean rituals, prophetic dreams, and spiritual journeys. The Yule log is traditionally made out of ash wood. And in the song we sung at the beginning of in the slideshow at the very beginning, we said, buy it green or old, sir, and buy up all that comes your way, for it's worth its weight in gold, sir. Very valuable value tree well into the Middle Ages and beyond. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm just putting my divider in here. I'm going to divide up in here in the groups before I go on to the next one. But as you see, I have them strung. Probably can't see very well. I'm sorry about that. I'll show you later. But I have them. Tree of Life at the bottom. Well, I guess you can't. My light's very bad. But I have them so that from the bottom up, just as the stave would be red. The Belarushnuen would be red. Okay, into the second grouping. The first character in the second grouping, hua, or the hawthorn. The hawthorn has many nasty thorns, and it often symbolizes the dark side of existence, the spiritual, the mythical, the physical forces of the shadow. Now, this was not necessarily a bad thing for the Celts' psychology, because darkness and chaos were thought to be the necessary opposites of order and light. The hawthorn is associated with a primal vital force that must be respected and is often used for magic related to masculine power, business decisions, masculine energies, fertility, and fire. Next is Druir, or the oak. The oak, the druid's tree. Therefore, the oak, it was sacred tree. It symbolized divine provision by Cornunus and the acorns it provides, which were used to make flour. It was a great long-lived tree. It may have been seen as an accumulator of wisdom, perhaps. It's connected with spells for protection, strength, fertility, money, success, good fortune. It may provide the ability to see the invisible or to be invisible, to open ways to an end or to bar the ways to an end. Okay. The Druir. The next one, the third character, Tina or Chinna, the holly. The holly is an evergreen. It bears its fruit throughout winter. The blazing red fruit, whoops, I forgot my spacer. The blazing red fruit of the winter resembles little fires that refuse to go out in the deepest of winter. The holly is always prepared with green leaves. So long as there is sun, however weak it is, it can continue to live. It continues its life process. While other trees are lifeless and naked, the holly, as a symbol of rebirth, does not permit death to overcome it. It grasps for life and growth at every possible moment. It's always ready to drink in the brightness of the sun. The ancients used the wood of the holly to construct weapons, but also in protective magic to emphasize the balance needed between strength and power, which is very important to the ancient Celts. Okay. The fourth character in the second grouping, Cole or hazel. The hazel is a tree of the bard. It contains the knowledge of rhymes, the epic tales, and the secrets of magic. The hazel holds the wisdom that is the key to personal growth, the understanding of the mysteries of divination. It was used in druids' wands to provide a magic shield during warfare. And the last one in the grouping, Kurt or apple. To the Celts, the apple was sacred. It had numerous mystical connotations and divinatory powers. The apple represents the physical nourishment provided by trees, and a good apple harvest represents also wealth and provision. Through the legends of Merlin and Arthur, apples came to also be associated with the madness that comes from the loss of something so beloved and so precious, and the death longing or death sense that comes with that. For the purpose of divination, the apple indicates a choice of some kind may need to be made. Okay, putting my last of my spacers in here before we move on to the third grouping. This is going to be really long. I didn't even consider that. I'm just going to love it. The first and the third grouping, these are the lines going diagonal here, is muin. Muin, meaning vine. Now, this is sort of where we part ways with the people that are naming their moons, because very often this is said to represent the grapevine. The ogam, however, does not represent the grapevine. I know this one for sure, for a fact, because grapes are not significant to the insular Celts. The climate where they lived was too cold to produce the fruit. Any grapes that they might have had was imported in the form of wine. The ogam of the vine refers to any other various woody vine species of the Isles. Most of those are likely to be members of the rose order. The vine is associated clearly with the back of a man or an ox. It is tough. It is a wood plant that is not easily deterred. It can climb a rock, it can climb trees, and face any other obstacle to reach the sun. And it holds its grip tenaciously. The vine, therefore, represents strength, effort, and determination. As a tool of divination, it may indicate time to reap what you sow, or to widen a search to gather what is needed. I need to turn my page here. Okay. Position myself a little better here. Okay. The second in this grouping is gort, or gourd, or ivy. Ivy grows in a helix form, which is a common theme found in Celtic patterns. If you've ever seen any of their knotwork patterns, it's complicated weaving, and it represents the wheel of life, actually. The fundamental part of human life is love, which will inevitably include grief as well as joy. All things must be done in harmony with the sacred Druidic principle of balance. Love can smother if it clings too quickly, just like ivy can. Okay, thus ivory is a gray mystery of dark and light that weaves the complicated facets of pleasure with pain. Ivy can be used for cooperation. It can be used to bind lovers together. It may indicate that change may be needed in order for growth to occur. Okay, the third in this third grouping is gettle, or broom. The broom represents a cleansing healing of the hearth and home. That is the body and the soul. Its sunlight-colored blossoms and its sky-reaching stalk makes it a symbol of the sun. It reflects the truth that is light, which illuminates and enables positive transformation. Broom is the strength of light and healing. Next comes straff, or the blackthorn, which to me represents cider. Blackthorn cider. If any of you have ever had that, it's delicious. But that's not what it means here. It represents alchemy. As a plant of alchemy, it is the force of transformation related to the fire. Alchemy in this sense is not about transforming lead into gold as we know alchemy to be. Rather, it is about transforming your spiritual lead into gold, bringing yourself toward perfection, which may involve understanding the deeper mysteries first. Straff, or blackthorn, represents the unexpected, usually radical change in your life. And finally, in the last grouping, ruish, or elder, ruish. Although the elder can be damaged easily, it recovers quickly and it springs back to life. It is seen as being related to creativity, renewal, beginnings and endings, birth and death. Other words, rejuvenation. Cycle of life. Going to put in my spacings. I do this before we get into the very last grouping of the 20. There are other, by the way, I want to say, there are other characters in the Ogam. I'm not sure how many there are altogether. I want to say 28. I might be mistaken. These 20 are the ones that have commonly been assigned tree names for whatever purpose. The other characters, I believe, represent like diphthongs or something. Or vowels. I'm not sure. I should look that up. I did have the information, but that's not what we're talking about today. So if you're interested, you can find that. Okay, anyway. As you see, I'm going from the bottom up. These are going to always be turning, but that's okay, because we're not actually reading anything. Remember, this is just the alphabet. We're not putting a message here. Okay, the last grouping begins with which is the fir. To understand the fir is to understand the knowledge that most things are not simple, are not easily broken down into clear hemispheres of black and white. Things are mixed, things are complex, and they're often confusing. Wisdom is not daunted by this complexity. Wisdom instead sees this as the richness that makes life interesting. The ponderings that we spoke of earlier, which I think is what's really these symbols, these characters in this alphabet are really, really lovely for that kind of meditation. Okay. The third the second I just put on here. I was getting out of myself. Let me put the spacer. The second was that I just added here. This is symbol Owen or gorse. Something I was not familiar with. The gorse is a symbol of the sacred wheel. It symbolizes the cycles of time and the strength of stone that is needed to move on through the cycles of the wheel successfully, including growing with each new cycle in the pursuit of perfection. You can almost see the characters of the Ogam building upon each other. Okay, the third, Ewer or Heather. I sure hope you can see these. I'm not very good at this. The heather represents the goodness of nature. And I love this because I do have one of my daughter's name is Heather. And she does represent goodness for sure. It is widespread. It's industrious. It provides for both man and beast in many ways. It stabilizes the soil by composting into the earth and making it possible for other less hardy plants to grow in areas that otherwise would be too harsh for them. Heather is a paternal symbol. It is a provider. It is a protector. The next symbol, Edid, or the aspen. The friend. This is the friend of the forest. The aspen is a well-known talker. Every time a little bit of breath of wind touches it, it makes a sound. So it is known as the poet's friend, as it is associated with the Irish god of eloquent speech, whose chains were made of words, and whose chains of words bound hearts with worthy inspiration. And finally, the very last one of this grouping is the Idid, or the yew. The old man of trees. The yew is renowned for its longevity. The yew groves, which were planted by Druids 2 millennia ago, still stand in the British Isles. As age is associated with wisdom, so is the yew. It is also a very poisonous tree. So it's related to the deadly weapon of the sword. Death, the beginning of life. And this is reflected in the yew's growth habits. Yews grow from a central root system beneath the ground. So as one trunk grows old and rots, a new one will arise from the earth to replace it. A life cycle that clearly shows the spiraling turns of rebirth. The yew is a wise old forest man, a venerable wood of wisdom, yet the yew is deadly poisonous. It reminds us that the revelation of the mysteries is dangerous business. No one knows that more than a witch. Only the worthy adept is fit to pursue. For wisdom is power as well as enlightenment, and without enlightenment, power can corrupt and is capable of much harm. Okay? I hope I didn't give you too much information. I'm going to cut here just for a minute so that I can, I want to show you finish up the string, and then I'll show you my finished products. I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, I have it all finished. It's ready to go. It'll go on the altar. It will be blessed, and then I believe it will probably be put on, like I said, on my husband's ceremonial staff that he uses as Bard Elder of the House of Quirkabilly. A little bit crude, but it's kind of nice. Anyway, I hope I didn't give you any more information than you ever wanted. I'm sorry the video was a little long. I just thought it was an interesting subject. Again, I want to reiterate, as for the so-called Celtic tree calendar, using it, I see no harm in it, especially if it really resonates with you. I just am passing on a bit of what I've learned and found interesting. If you do use the calendar, please be aware of its roots. That's all I ask. Because it is really based on historical truth, historical evidence of the alphabet, the Ogam, which was a very, very, very widely used alphabet among the ancient Celts. And again, the meanings of the characters in the Ogam were known to them, used by them, important to them, that they used them on so many things and so many instances. And again, for magical purposes, I think it's really very cool. Anyway, as always, I thank you so much for watching my channel. I am Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.